Hey everybody, I'm gonna go right into the screen sharing here for today's presentation on mental skills post-COVID for high school tennis. And here we go. First of all, thank you everyone for taking the time out on a gorgeous Sunday. It's beautiful outside. I wish we could be doing this webinar outside. You don't have to get on your cameras. That's fine. But we're gonna go right through the content. We're gonna start right on time because we have a lot to cover today. So first of all, for those of you that may not know me, I'm Angelo Rosetti. I have an identical twin brother. His name is Federer, and we both have a passion for teaching and playing tennis and racket sports. Currently, I serve as the director of racket sports at the Tennis and Fitness Center of Rocky Hill. And with my identical twin, we set 2 Guinness World Records for the longest rally and longest volley rally. In the background, you can see these certificates. So I certainly have a passion for mental skills in the mental game, and I want to share that with all of you. I'm a USPTA, PTR, IPTPA, and mental skills certified coach. I'm the USTA past president. I've competed before. You could see there, #1 in open doubles with my brother and top 10 in singles. And I've coached nationally ranked and world ranked players. And I've competed at USTA Nationals and also coached at USTA Nationals. And I developed a method using awareness called the 3-2-1 method. We'll talk a little bit about that today. And then finally, probably most importantly, I'm a father of a high school freshman tennis player. So I can relate to all the parents on the call today. I have 2 children, and my older daughter is a freshman, and she'll play tennis on the team. And I'm a 2-time high school tennis coach. So welcome all of you that are tennis coaches. I saw that some tennis coaches signed up. I think that's wonderful. Hopefully you can share some of this material with your team. So I know we have a mix of parents today, players, and coaches. I'm hoping that you find a lot of value in today's session. So enough about me. Let's jump right into the material. So the definition of being what I call mentally strong. Mentally strong is an ability to cope with or handle pressure, stress, or adversity, overcome or rebound from failures in tennis to play up to your ability under pressure. So if you look at that carefully, it's playing up to your ability under pressure, under duress. In other words, when the score is being kept. And so many players have told me, and even coaches, you know, I can play really well in practice when it doesn't count, but once there's something on the line, or once I'm representing my team and their scorekeeping, it becomes much more difficult, or I never seem to play freely or never up to my full potential. So the goal is to get yourself to compete at the level that you know you can play at. Not necessarily above that level, but just at the level that you deserve to play at based on what you know about your game, based on the number of hours you put in to train and work out. So a lot of people misperceive that as, well, I have to play, quote unquote, out of my mind every time I step on the court. That's not true. If you play 1% better than the last time you played, and you learn whether you win or lose, then you've actually won. So that is something that you can control, is your effort level and your amount of learning. And we'll talk a lot today about controlling your controllables. Here's a quote from one of the best all-time players, Roger Federer. "I know the way I play is more visible than my mental toughness. I really had to work a lot on my mental toughness. I was able to show that tenacity week in and week out." And this is some information here that he puts in this quote that is really remarkable. He mentions that he had to work really hard on his mental game, but yet people take for granted that Roger Federer is mentally strong because he's mentally strong, but that's something that he had to really work on. And even Novak Djokovic, the same. He quotes that one of his best wins at a Grand Slam early on was primarily due to his mental game in the fifth set. So working on your mental game is really important, and I'll demonstrate that in a moment. Michael Jordan here, the all-time basketball great, is quoted as saying, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I failed over and over again, and that is why I succeed." So for high school tennis players out there, you have to look at your failures as learning, or fail forward, or remembering that failure isn't the opposite of success, but rather an integral part of success, like steps on a ladder. In order to get to your goal, you need to fail and learn from those failures to get better. So this is a representation of why mental skills are so important. So I want everyone just to write down on their own, what percent of the time in a match is the tennis ball not in play? And I'll give you a few seconds to write down what percent of time in a match the ball is not in play. And I've gotten a lot of answers here in the past. What percent is not in play? Okay, drum roll, please. 82.5% of the time, according to the Atlantic and Wall Street Journal. There was an article there. 82.5% of the time, the ball is not in play. The reason why that is so fascinating is, what are you thinking as a player? What is your mind doing during the overwhelming majority of the tennis match? So if you think that tennis is just a physical contest, well, unfortunately, this statistic shows that it's more of a mental game. But it seems like a physical contest because when you watch tennis on TV, there's ads, there's a lot going on between points, you're listening to the commentary. But when you're actually competing, the competitor's playing, the ball is in play less than 20% of the time. And according to this stat, it would be 17.5% of the time. So if 17.5% of the time is technique driven, is physical fitness driven, what does your mental and emotional fitness look like for the 82.5% of the time? And how much have you prepared for that? So in asking tennis players and high school tennis players, how many hours a week do you practice your strokes, your technique? Do you work out? And I would get, let's say, between 5 and 15 hours a week, all said and done, matches, practices, private lessons. And then when I ask, well, how many hours a week do you specifically work on your mental game? And usually it is 0 or 1 would be the maximum, or sometimes about a half hour in a week. And the reason why that is so important is that there's a drastic difference, in my opinion, between comprehension and retention of a skill. And the mental game is a skill for tennis that needs to be developed, not just understood. So, for example, if I were to ask the typical tennis player, do you agree, now knowing this number, 82.5% of the time, the ball is not in play? Is your mind important for your success in tennis? And overwhelmingly, everyone will say yes. And then they understand it's important, but then they don't do anything on a regular basis to back that up. And so I usually like to say, well, if you know that going to the gym, you'll be building more muscles, you'll be getting in shape. They not only comprehend that, but then they go to the gym several times a week. Whereas on the mental game, since it's intangible, a lot of people, I would say the majority of people would agree, and probably all of you, that the mental game is extraordinarily important. But then what are you doing on a daily basis to strengthen your mental muscles? One part of the mental game is building confidence, but not just confidence for the sake of confidence, but something called resilient confidence. Because confidence can be like the stock market. It goes up and down and up and down. Eventually it ends up high, but it's not something that is a direct measure of how many hours you spend on the tennis court. Because some days you can play great and other days not so great, or sometime in practice you play extremely well, and then when you get to a high school tennis match, for some reason you don't put it together. So you need to not only have confidence, not have static confidence, but this dynamic, resilient confidence that can fluctuate, that can be flexible, and that you can rebound when you have events that happen to you that are beyond your control that might affect your confidence. And here, the bottom is your personality. There's different types of personalities. And as far as coaches go, you know, us tennis coaches and high school coaches need to know that everyone is wired differently and they're coached differently. They respond to different things. Some players like to have a drill sergeant as a coach. They need to be told what to do precisely. Others need to enjoy their time on the court. They need to have humor involved. You need to know what's important for each player, because what's important for each player is not necessarily the same for the entire team. And that is someone's personality or how they like to be coached. And then the awareness is, be aware of what your confidence level is as a player in the warm-up. How are you feeling today? Because tennis, especially now post-COVID, there is a lot going on in your mind when you get to the tennis court, now more than ever. Are we going to have a season again this year? Is it going to be postponed? Are there going to be match cancellations? Am I going to be quarantined? Is my coach or my teammate or friends going to be quarantined? There's a lot going on. But none of that is within your direct control. So you need to be aware of what you can control and focus on those things, and then put aside the things that you cannot control. You cannot control as a player where the coach puts you on the team, whether you play singles, whether you play doubles, whether you're on varsity or JV. Just be grateful that right now with what's going on, you're actually able to play high school tennis. Then a commitment. And in regards to mental skills, you need to have a daily commitment of what you're doing with your mental game. And something I like to do is journal every day. So I have so many different journals. They're all over the place here. Here's one of my journals, and every day I write in it quotes, notes, reflections, to-dos, things that I want to go back to and track on. So something very simple is a journal. And for everyone that's registered for this webinar, I'm going to email you a free gift. I had mentioned it. It is, let's see here, the 10 coronavirus controllables. It's a PDF. I think you'll find a lot of value in that. And one of them is journaling on a regular basis. And so then disciplined thinking. Part of being disciplined with your thinking during a tennis match is knowing what you're thinking and then putting it into two buckets, either positive thoughts or negative thoughts. The positive thoughts you want to embrace and repeat, and the negative thoughts you want to stop and avoid. You want to accept them, but then not have them affect your play. And then we have practice pressure and emotional strength. So practice pressure. So for those of you players that are playing in clinics or having lessons, now is the time to keep score in every lesson and in every practice, some type of score. You can do score staging, which I really like to do with a lot of players I work with, where you're down love 40. And if you're down love 40 and then you come back and you win that game, then you win 3 games. And then the person that had 40 only won 1. And then you change the roles. And then the other player is serving down love 40. And it's the same 3-to-1 ratio for the games. And then 30 love, you start, down 30 love, up 30 love. You could start up 40 love. You could start down 15-30. But basically, the player that comes back from the deficit and then closes out the game earns more games than the player that was ahead. And the key is you do the same for both players and you play sets of those, and I call that score staging. So that is a way to practice pressure. Another is to play 1-point games, pretend that is add in or add out, and whoever wins that point wins the game, kind of like a no add game, and you play sets of 1 point and see how you can handle pressure. And then the other obviously is to play tie breaks up to 7, tie breaks up to 10, the super tie break, and focus on how you're handling pressure when the end is near. And then finally, your emotional strength. And emotions are tied to mental skills. And, what I've learned over the years, and I mentioned in my book, Tenacity, is you cannot have a thought and an emotion at the same time, except for, let's say, an emotion like love, like you love being on the court competing. And oh, by the way, I'm going to hit it to his backhand because it's weaker. But for the most part, you can't have an emotion and a thought at the same time, which means your logical thinking decreases when you're experiencing emotion on the tennis court. So if you are emotional after losing a big point or too excited after winning a big point, take a pause, reflect, and remember that you want to think logically before the next point rather than act with emotion. And thinking about Roger Federer in his career, when he was younger, a young teenager, he had a fiery temper. He used to break rackets, throw rackets. He was always very embarrassed for him and his family when he did it after the fact, but he continued to do it. And the interesting thing was he had an epiphany that he figured out on his own that his negative behavior made him play worse. And he wanted to be one of the best players in the world and win Wimbledon. And so the year that he decided that he was going to manage his emotions, he ended up beating Sampras and winning Wimbledon for the first time later that tournament. So it goes to show that even players of all levels, and even players like Roger Federer, one of the best of all time, if not the GOAT, they need to work on their emotional strength as well. And we talked briefly about this, but this is something called PMA, positive mental attitude. And this is something you want to monitor on a regular basis throughout the match. Number one is you want to be aware of what your thoughts are. Think of it as you're a chair umpire and you're just recording whether your thought is negative or whether it's positive. And at the end of a match, what % of your thoughts were negative? What % of your thoughts were positive? And what percent of the match did you track what your thoughts were? The second would be embrace the positive thoughts and repeat them. And the third would be reframe the negative thoughts. So one word you can add is the word yet. So whenever you think to yourself during a tight match, I can't do this, then just add the word yet. You don't have to change the whole sentence, but I can't do this yet. I can't get my second serve in yet. I can't seem to get to the net on him or her yet. I can't seem to lob over the backhand side yet. So those are ways to reframe negative thoughts. As far as mixed messages, communication is based on three primary areas. There's words, there's tone, and there's your body language. And believe it or not, all of these are something that you can control and that impact you greatly. So take a moment and just jot down or think about what percent, as far as communications, are the importance of words, the actual words that you think or say, the tone of your thoughts or words, and your body language. And let's say a lot of this would happen between points, after points, before points, and on changeovers. So give a moment, think of what percent you would break these down. And this is also important for high school coaches out there when they're evaluating players that would represent their team well in tryouts and in practices, or when they're determining lineups or doubles pairings. They're going to be looking for these things when they're doing pairings. I know when I was a high school coach, I certainly did. Okay, here are the answers. Only 7% of communications are with the spoken word. 38% of it is the voice or tone of those words or thoughts. And finally, 55% is the body language. So this is so important. How do you talk to yourself? What are you thinking about yourself during a tennis match? And is it nice? Is it with care? And one way to help improve this, is pretend that you're coaching your best friend. And your best friend is just learning tennis for the very first time, and they miss an easy overhead. What words would you say? What would be the tone of which you would say them or think them? And finally, what would your body language be when you're communicating those words? And that is so important. So if you could take yourself out of yourself, how would you talk to your best friend who's just picking up tennis? And it would probably be something like this. That's okay. That was a tough overhead. It was a little bit windy. The sun might have been in your eyes. Everybody makes mistakes like that. That is perfectly fine. Learn from it. Next time, just move your feet back a little bit more. You can do it. And something like that is a way that you should be thinking or talking to yourself during points, after points, and during changeovers in tennis matches. This is the GROW model, and for every high school player, they should have a goal going in. And for parents should be aware of your child's goals. Why high school tennis? And for middle schoolers getting ready, could be, I want to pick one sport. I want my child to have one sport, or I want to play one sport because of the social aspects, because now COVID restrictions are starting to loosen up and I can actually do it. Tennis is one of the safest sports because there's natural physical distances. What do you want from tennis? And the parents should know the goal for your child. Obviously, the child should have a goal. The actual players should write down their goal on a board, on some type of board like this, and put it above your bed. I call it a dream board. But what is your goal? Write it down, cut out pictures, put quotes that are, you know, motivational or inspirational for you to help you aspire to be a better player. Post them in your room, so every time you wake up in the morning, you're faced with your goal, and every time you go to bed, you're faced with your goal. And the coaches should know the individual goals of each of the athletes on the team, because everyone has their individual goals. And then, of course, those need to fall in line to support the team goals, because it's not about me, but it's about we. And one player could have a goal of playing singles, or one player could have a goal of playing doubles with their best friend, or one goal would be just to make the JV team, or one goal could be just to travel to the away matches, or another goal could be get to the state tournament. Those are high school specific goals that players could have. And then the reality is, where are you now specifically in relation to that goal? And, you know, right now you could be, let's say, a sophomore, and you really want to play singles, and last year you played doubles, but you've been working on your singles game and you think you're ready, you know, so you need to assess where you are now to know where you need to go. And then what are some options? And I know a lot of players, you know, let's say juniors, seniors, they might have the option to play singles, but if they've played doubles the last couple of years, they might want to stick with their partner and play doubles. They might want to represent the team in the state tournament in doubles, not singles. So you need to list out what your options are and communicate them with your coach and your parents. And then finally, your choice. You know, what will you do? You have options. What will you do? And hopefully that path is the best path to your overall goal. Now, one of my favorite parts is the stoplight of routines. And it's really important to understand and know the difference between rituals and routines. So a ritual is based on a superstition. So, for example, those of you who watch Rafael Nadal play tennis, before he serves, you know, he has specific rituals. He doesn't step on any of the white lines. He usually adjusts his shorts. And that is actually a ritual. It's a superstition, because whether he stepped on the line by accident or adjusted his shorts by accident or not, you know, that really has no direct benefit to his tennis play. And the reason why it's important to know the difference. There's a friend of mine who is a Olympic gold medalist, and she shared a story with me that one of her friends was a gymnast, and she wears a hair tie, a ribbon that was always pink, and she had to compete in the gymnastics with this pink ribbon. So in any event, here she is competing for the Olympics for a gold medal for Team USA, and she forgot her pink hair ribbon. And so she had to wear the blue one, and it was a disaster, and it was the worst performance of her life. So if you reflect on that, did the color of the hair ribbon really make a difference in her routine? No. So you have to look at it and say, does your routine help you specifically with improving your tennis game? And if it doesn't, if it's based on a superstition, you know, then that's a ritual, and you want to stay away from rituals. But a routine is something that you do every time with consistency that actually helps you improve your mental skills and then therefore improve your level of play. For example, taking time between points to breathe is really important, because it gets oxygen in your lungs, oxygen to your brain, and you can think clearly, you can become more present. So that's one specific example. So now we'll go over the 3 stoplight colors, and these are based on what's happening in the match. So the first one is the red light routine. And this is when you are down 0-5, you are down love 40, you are down triple break point, you've just lost the first set. These are red light moments. You need to be aware that it's a red light moment, number one. So you need to separate your emotions from logic. And number two is you need to stop and then reset completely. Just like pressing the power button on your laptop, you need to reset, or shutting down your iPhone and restarting it. You need to stop and reset and then recommit to simple plans. Or another way to say it is aim for big targets. So let's say you're playing doubles and the other team is serving and volleying and you can't seem to hit your passing shot. It goes too high, it goes in the net or right to the net player. So then recommitting to a simple plan is keep the ball cross court, keep it away from the net player. And if you're lobbing, keep those lobs really high. And then the third is be positive. What goes down must come up. What goes up must come down. If your opponents won 5 games in a row, why can't you win the next 5 games in a row? And a story here was it was his 2 best friends playing tennis. And one best friend was up 5-1 against the other one. And at 5-1, he lost focus, he lost his concentration. The other person played better, and he loses 6 games in a row, and he loses the match 7-5. So after the match, both players were talking to each other, and the one that was up 5-1 that didn't close out the match said to his best friend, he's like, I can't believe I let you off the hook. You know, I should have closed that out. You know, I just played terrible. And his friend said, hey, wait a second, you're not giving me any credit for my comeback. I actually figured out what I was doing wrong, and I figured out a game plan that I knew you wouldn't like. And I earned those 6 games in a row, and I deserve to win that set. I won 5 more games in a row, like you won 5 games in a row when you're up 5-1. You know, why don't I deserve to go on a run too? And that is really powerful, that what goes up must come down. So whenever you're down, say, hey, you know, I could do this. We could do this. My brother and I were playing the year that we became #1 in New England in men's open doubles. We were playing in the finals of a match, and my brother was down love 40 in the second set. And I pulled him aside and I said, wouldn't it be great if you come back and hold your serve and we win this match? Wouldn't that make a great story? And now here I am telling the story that he came back from love 40 on a big game, closed out that game, and we closed out the match, and then we ended up becoming #1 in New England. So you got to be positive when things aren't going your way. And then finally, you got to tell yourself, I have nothing to lose. Pressure is on my opponent or my opponents. I need to play freely, and that is an extraordinarily important phrase. I use it with a lot of the players that I coach, and for players that are on this call that I coach, you probably heard me say it with nauseam. Play freely. That is probably one of the most important phrases in tennis and in all of sports, because that allows you to play to your full potential without judgment or without criticizing yourself. Then a yellow light routine. So a yellow light routine is the score is even. In a game, it's 30 all, deuce, 15 all, 3 all in the first set, or you split sets and it's 1 all in the third set. You know, yellow light is you're pretty much even with your opponent. And so here it's what's going well, what's working, and what's not working. And so here, what were their weaknesses? How did I win the majority of these points? Not just that I won the point. How did I win these points? And then the second is, how did I lose the points? Was it an unforced error, a forced error? Did that player hit a winner? Am I leaving too much of the court open? Am I coming to the net too tightly and they're lobbing me? Then the second is deep breaths. And there's different types of breathing, and you can choose which ones you like the most, but you definitely want to use your diaphragm and not just have short breaths, but deep breaths using your diaphragm. So when you breathe in and breathe out, you need to have these belly breaths where your belly moves. To know if you're breathing deeply enough, a good method is to lay down on a couch, let's say, and put a book or your phone on your stomach. And then when you breathe, does it move up and down on your stomach? And if it does, you're doing what's called diaphragmatic breathing. And if it doesn't, then you have shallow breathing, and that's where you can get nervous or hyperventilate under pressure. So what I've kind of discovered is that there's a specific method when you're nervous that you need to breathe. And this is really important as far as understanding what's going on in your body and in your mind. So in tryouts, everyone is going to be nervous, whether it's a walk-on, whether it's a freshman or a senior or the #1 player or a doubles player. Everyone's going to have some sense of nerves, but it's not shedding your nerves or not having nerves that differentiates the top players from the other players, but it's how you handle your nerves. So the first mental trigger that I use is I turn nervousness to excitement. So the moment that you think I'm nervous, rephrase that to I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. Because physiologically, they've done research and it shows that when they hook up your body to a heart monitor and your palms, whether they're sweaty or not, all of those physiological reactions, your blood pressure, heart rate, sweating, breathing, all of those look exactly the same, whether you're nervous or whether you're excited for something. So since it feels the same, your mind is not going to know the difference. So you have to tell your mind that you're excited. You're not nervous. And I love being a keynote speaker and inspiring people. And one of the things I do now, if you've ever heard me speak, is I will say, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to be here. Because I'm telling myself I'm not nervous, I'm actually really excited to be here. Like today, I'm really excited to be here. And as far as breathing goes, when you are nervous and you're turning it to excitement, you still don't want to hyperventilate for being excited. So what I found is if you take 3 deep breaths would be ideal, but even if you do 1 and you do it in this manner, is you breathe in through your mouth so you get more oxygen in, and you hold it for a few seconds, and then you breathe out as slowly as you possibly can through your nose. And what I've found is that with each breath, it calms you down. Now with Djokovic, you see him do it the other way, is he goes in through his nose and out through his mouth or nose, and that is fine. But in my opinion, he's working on his breathing. He's not nervous at that point. So if you're really nervous, work on a breath like that, is breathing in deep through your mouth and then pausing and then exhaling through your nose as slowly as you possibly can. And you'll find that that elevated heart rate will start to dissipate. So try that and see if that works. Then refocus on a game plan and start your positive self-talk. You know, okay, I had a lead, now it's even, that's okay. Let me go back to what I was doing before. Every time I approached to his or her backhand, she or he hit a weak passing shot and I won the point. So refocus on what's working. And then finally, where do you do this? Usually at your towel, at the fence, at the back of the court. And one of the drills that I work on with players is having them have a towel. When I played Division I for the University of Connecticut, I always had a towel with me, a white towel, and I carried that with me every game. And on every point, whether I won the point or not, turned around like Sharapova, went back to the fence and toweled off. I wasn't even sweaty. It wasn't the point of wiping the sweat, although that is a benefit. It's to think in my towel and breathe and reflect and reset. And so find your towel and use it on a regular basis, not when you just make mistakes, but when you are winning. Because when you're winning, you want to also go to your towel and create that positive routine so that when you make a mistake, you already have that positive habit. See, erase, and replace. So for yellow lights and red light situations, you want to see, erase, replace either in your towel or going back to your towel. And so what does that mean? Well, this is an example of your mental whiteboard. And as soon as you miss a shot, so let's say you miss an easy volley, I'm going to tell you right now, the majority of tennis players, what do they do when they miss an easy volley? And everyone can start thinking of what do they do when they miss an easy volley? What do you do as a tennis player when you miss your easy volley? And everybody typically rehearses the volley, and you've missed it again and again and again. But also, because I've seen like one person, he misses the volley in the net. This is a true story. He misses the volley in the net. So then it bounces back to him and he tries to hit it again. He hits it in the net. He tries to hit it a third time and a fourth time, and he hit every single one in the net. And he got even more frustrated. So number one is you end up missing and getting frustrated and tiring out yourself. But number two is it is a tell for your opponent that you're insecure about that shot. And so if I ever am playing someone and I see that they're rehearsing their backhand after a big miss, I know I'm going to hit it there. That is my cue to hit it to their backhand because they're insecure about their backhand. So you don't want to show your rehearsal to your opponents. You want to do it in your mind, in your mind's eye. And that is part of see, erase, replace. So here's what it would look like. Let's say you're playing, you hit your shot and you miss it. So now you get the racket up. You are fixing your strings, even though they don't need to be fixed. You're keeping your head up so you can get oxygen in, your shoulders up and back, your lower back straight. You're walking with positivity and confidence. Just like we talked earlier, your body language is extraordinarily important. The first 4 seconds after your miss. You then start to breathe and you go to your towel. And when you get to your towel, you're going to see, erase, and replace. You're going to see the error that you just did rather than spend mental energy avoiding it. Just like if I were to tell you, don't think of the pink elephant, what are you going to do? The first thing you're going to think of is the pink elephant. So you don't want to avoid the error. You want to embrace and accept it and move on from it. And that is see. See the error, accept it. Erase it from your mental whiteboard and replace it with you making that volley, you making that shot. Now, your mind doesn't know the difference between the miss and the mental make. So when you start the next point, you've really made it. You've got confidence and had a repetition in your mind, an image in your mind of you making the shot, which will help you in the match make more shots like that. And there are studies out there that they had 2 groups of basketball players, and one group of basketball players went and shot free throws in a gym, and another group of basketball players just visualized, or I like to say imagined themselves with all of their senses making free throws. They practiced the same amount of time and the results were both improved. Both groups of players improved their free throws, whether they did mental rehearsal or actually physically shooting them, and the results were remarkably similar. There wasn't much of a a difference between the physical making of the free throw and the mental rehearsal of it. And that's why see, erase, replace is so important, especially after misses. You still want to go to your towel and see and repeat it on green light situations. You hit a great winner. You hit a beautiful kick serve out wide. You poach with your doubles partner and put away the volley with crisp intent. Then in your mind, repeat it. Go to your towel. Repeat that. Because now you're creating a positive habit of going to your towel, not just on your mistakes, but on your makes, because then you've done that. You turn. Sharapova had that routine where she would turn, she would fix her strings, go back, face the fence, slap her thigh, turn around, bounce on her feet. That's really important. So create a routine, not a ritual, that is important and works for you, something that works for you. And in your green light routine, this is when things are going well. Respond to what's happening, because there's something that Brad Gilbert coined in his book, Winning Ugly, called the wounded bear. And that is when you have a big lead on your opponent, that your opponent now is a wounded bear, and a wounded bear is much more dangerous than a bear at rest that's not wounded. They're going to try anything to turn around the score, make tougher line calls, even cheat, look for coaching, even if it's legal or not legal, try to distract you, take more time between points, rush you, change their tactic, Nick Kyrgios underhand serve. There's a lot. So you want to respond to what's happening. So remember that when you have your opponent down, and typically when you've won the first set, the first 3 games of the second set is, in my opinion, the wounded bear area. The first 3 games, if you can survive the first 3 games after winning the first set in any high school tennis match, you can pretty much close out that set. Those 3 games are critical. And then recover from what your opponent just did. So if they quick serve you, then the next point, show your back to them, go to your towel, take the time that you need to prepare for the next point rather than go through the motions at their pace. And that gives you time to then refocus on your game plan of what has been working for you and what their weaknesses are. And then finally, turn around, get ready for that next point. On the changeover, there's the 3 R's. So recover, which is physically and mentally. You could have had long points and you need to gather your thoughts and your breath. Nadal is really strong at this. On his changeovers, you have no idea if he's up or he's down. He'll jog off and run to the other side when he's done. He has a lot of positive energy that he exudes. So you want to really practice positive energy, positive self-talk, have a good attitude, and then tell yourself, I just need to give 100% effort. In my book, Tenacity, the Tenacious Mindset on and off the court, I mentioned a rule I came up with called the 0-100 rule. 0 expectations, 100% effort. Expectations sound good, but actually are not. They'll deteriorate your level of play, and here's why. Most high school players cannot distinguish between goals and expectations. So for those of you on the call now, just think for a moment, is there a difference between goals and expectations, and what do I think that difference is? So I'll give you a minute thinking about, is there a difference? And if so, what is the difference? Okay, so in my opinion, a goal is set before the high school tennis match. A goal is set for your season. Let's say your goal is make #1, be #1 on the team, help my team get to the state tournament, be undefeated. That is a goal. That now sits on a poster board above your bed. It's in your tennis journal. That is a goal. You set your goals, you don't focus on them. Because if you focus on your goal during the tennis match, that is an uncontrollable, that is a future result and outcome based on many different things that happen, and it will not keep you present on hitting the ball as cleanly as you possibly can. So remember, there's a difference between goals and expectations, and you want to keep your expectations at 0. And unfortunately, coaches, your teammates, friends, parents, they mean well, but sometimes they'll add expectations. Come on, only one more match and we win this. Only one more game and we win this. Well, they can't control the whole game. They can only control each shot that they hit within the point. So things like, hey, remember to go to your towel. Remember to stay present. Remember to breathe. Remember to keep your shoulders back when you're walking around and look confident. Those are things that are controllables, and those would help you get the desired outcome. So 0 expectations, but 100% effort. You want to give 100% effort all the time, because effort is a controllable, just like your attitude, just like your sportsmanship, just like your punctuality, just like your preparedness. Those are things that are controllables, and you only need to focus on your controllables. So here, number 2, on a changeover, you refocus, you do process thinking, which is what we just talked about. What are my controllables? Am I controlling my controllables? When I used to compete, I used to have an index card in my tennis bag. I wrote 10 things that were really important to my game. And a couple of them I remember are move your feet, positive attitude, fair line calls, for example, 100% effort. And then I would circle right before the match, based on what I knew about the match, the 3 I wanted to work on. And then after the warm-up, I would put a box around the 1 that I wanted to focus on. And if I controlled that and did that to the best of my ability, then for me, that was a win. That was success. And then finally, recommit. Always change a losing game, never change a winning game. Unfortunately, variety is overrated. And I've seen so many players, after winning the first set, almost feel bad for their opponent, or get a little bored or distracted or focus on something else. And the other player comes back and wins the second set and ultimately then wins the match. When you are ahead, just think, closing out the match is not boring. Is that if you're going to be bored, or if you're going to lose your focus after the handshake, or post-COVID, after the racket tap, but stay committed to what's working. And I usually say winning isn't boring. And then change a losing game, and that would be red light, going back to the red light again, change what is not working. So here I have a diagram, it's listed here, and I highlighted it here. I figured out a stoplight of my own, and I entitle it, the green is when you're behind, the yellow is when you're even, and the red is when you're ahead. And this is a little bit different than the stoplight I shared about routines. This is more about strategy, tactics, playing styles, and I'll explain. So most people, as far as their level of risk, if I were to ask you as a tennis player, if you are up 5-0 or you are up 40-love on your serve, do you have nothing to lose by going, let's say, for a big first serve? I'm going to pause on that. Think about that. I would say 99% of the people I ever ask that question, they say, I have nothing to lose at 40-love. And I beg to differ. You have the lead to lose. You do have something to lose. Your opponent, who's down love 40 or love 5, has nothing to lose. They already are losing. So when you are behind, go for it. be courageous. I say that, 3 C's, be courageous when you're behind, be cunning when you're even, go to their weakness, and be consistent when you're ahead. Play percentage tennis when you're ahead. And I know this is counter to most coaching or beliefs, but if you really drill down, if you trade baskets with someone that you are beating, you will win. And in tennis, obviously there's trading points, not baskets, but I was watching a UConn basketball game one time, and they were up 20 at halftime, and then the announcer said, if UConn just trades baskets with their opponent, they will never lose. I'm paraphrasing it, but that stuck with me, and I realized that is the same in tennis, is that if you are ahead and then you trade points, you will never lose. The match might stay close, but you'll never actually lose. And so that's why I say take less risk when you're up and take more risk when you're down. And so that's why there, as far as your risk level, is swing freely when you're down, and when you're up, play percentage tennis, but not to confuse percentage tennis with playing safe, because playing safe in tennis is risky. And then we talked about this briefly before, the thought awareness. What am I thinking? That's like factually, what am I thinking? And are my thoughts positive or negative? So you want to repeat with thought rehearsal your positive thoughts, and then move on from your negative thoughts or stop them. And we talked about this before. I mentioned control your controllables. Be aware of what's beyond your control and accept those things. Be aware of what's within your control and control those, and know the difference between your controllables and your uncontrollables. And finally, as far as mental skills tools that you can use, this is an app that I use. It's called APEAK. It's really interesting. I've been using it recently every day. It has routines on there, breathing. I know if you use the word tenacity with 2 N's in all caps, you can get a 30% discount on it. And I have a brief video here you could see about it, but you want to repeat mental skills. You don't want to just do it one and done. So here I will play this for you.
Thousands of dollars per year. Now, it's never been easier as a or more convenient to build positive mental habits for your tennis game. All habits with AP. Start training for free today.
And so that's the interesting app. If you want more information on that, certainly email me. I'm going to follow up with an email to thank everyone as well. So that's one tool that I use on a regular basis that I find very valuable. I have a book out. It's called Tenacity, the Tenacious Mindset on and off the court. It's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And I have a hardcover and softbacks. This is the hardcover. I put my heart and soul into it, and I bought the rights to a lot of color photographs. Like here's one of Roger Federer, and so in any event, that's something that hopefully you find value in. And then for those of you that are interested, this is the world record ball. If you could see it there, it's really worn out, and it's next to the brand new ball from the can. That ball was rallied 14 hours and 31 minutes, but by my brother and I with no breaks. There's a display at the International Tennis Hall of Fame in Newport, Rhode Island, with the original Guinness certificate and tennis balls and the counters. And then we volleyed on Roger Federer's birthday of August 8th, 2015, 30,576 times without a miss. And I don't share those things to impress you, but to impress upon you the importance of the mental game in tennis, because both of those records we rehearsed mentally much more than physically to get ready for those, because we have families and we couldn't just disappear and practice for hours at a time. So thinking about your mental game, planning it, and then committing to improve it on a regular basis is really important. I also have an online course I developed myself. It's called Tenacity. And if you go to tenacitywith2ns.org, you can learn more about that. For tennis teaching pros, you can get credit for PTR and US PTA. The course is recognized by both trade organizations. Finally, if you are inspired to aspire to be a better player, just make the commitment to improve your mental game in whatever way possible. And I'm here. I can work with people directly as well, just on their mental game. And for me, I'm really passionate about using what I've learned in the past and setting world records to help others set world records of their own, whatever those records might be. I really appreciate your time and attention, especially on a sunny Sunday afternoon. I'm glad that we're all surviving COVID in our own way, and I really can't wait until we can get back to the handshake rather than the racket tap, and I'm sure you are too. And thanks to the parents, players, and coaches for making high school tennis possible amid this pandemic. I'm really inspired that the seasons are beginning, and I'll be emailing everyone the 10 coronavirus controllables that I created as a thank you, and also the code for that mental skills app, so you can get a discount if you're interested in that. And if you have any questions, email me, or if I can help you in any way, angelo@tenacity.org. I love to speak to teams and give inspirational presentations, so I'm happy to help in any way that I can. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it, and hopefully I'll meet or talk to most of you soon. Take care. I hope you found value. Bye.